Heyo everyone, KCR Jones here, and welcome back to another video. This time, I was considering making this video as soon as I got my New Haven G4A, which that is, the only one. It is a custom. If you haven't watched that video, go ahead and watch it already. But that is basically the new Lionel Legacy 10 Wheeler, and I wanted to compare it to something. For this video, I'm going to use my New Haven R1 mount, in which this was out of the box, how it appeared. But ever since the 2020 Volume 1 catalog, Lionel has changed the Legacy control system by giving us a few new features and changing a few of the older ones. And today, I wanted to run through what I've noticed a week owning this locomotive. I wanted to point out what's different using what I know from Legacy, using my example of the R1. So join me with this investigation. I want to apologize in advance if I slow down my speech or anything. I'm reading my notes that I have taken separately, so it takes me a couple seconds to read, folks. But here it is. We're going to run through the R1 first and use that to demonstrate. Let me first turn on the locomotive, and I'm going to be using the Lionel Legacy Cab 2 system, which is what I use. I'll explain in a moment later, but let me hold down the button and you'll see how quick it does to start up.
This is the dispatcher. Do you copy?
Roger that. I read you. Over.
Start up and get ready to move. Over.
Roger that. Out.
And just like that, the locomotive is ready to roll. And we put on the train brake, which I nicknamed the parking brake, just in case if I inch the throttle at any point like this, it won't take off on us. But as you know, with the Lionel Legacy system, we have the 32 step chuff labor, which, depending on a steam or a diesel engine, on steam you get 32 different rates of the chuffing, is the density of how heavy it'll be chuffing. If you set it to a very low labor, it'll be almost the running gear. If you set it to a very high chuff, you'll have the engine sounding like it's going up a 4% grade with 100 cars. You also get 200 speed steps using the Cab 2 system, as in when you actually look at the throttle here where it says ENG, that turns into a 0 every time, or when it's right now. When I apply any bit of turning the wheel, you can see it's still going to be 0 because the brake is on. But it'll go all the way up to 199, so 199 plus 1 being 0 makes 200. And of course you can go backwards those 200 steps as well. Past 2017, anything from the 2017 onward catalogs, this one being one of them from a 2018 catalog, you can run them via Bluetooth. The water tower sound effects when stopped, and the injector sounds when in motion. I didn't actually know about the injectors until recently, but if I hold down the 3 key on the number pad, take a listen to what you hear.
My water's full.
Roger that. Out.
You also get injector steam when it's in motion. I will demonstrate that when we're running the locomotive. When you hold down the reset key, you also get to hear coal being loaded into the tender after one blast of the whistle.
The coal's full. Over.
Affirmative. Out.
While using the Cab 2 system, if you press the speed button, it opens up a separate window. This is where you can change the labor and everything, and since the brake is down, you can see the labor also changes. But if you hold down these buttons, you get multiple speed sets. You have restricted, slow, medium, limited, normal, and highball. Now, if you actually hold down one of the buttons, you'll hear the crew talk like this.
Dispatcher here. Go to slow speed. Over.
Copy that. Increasing the slow speed. Out.
Which I think that is a cool little feature not too many people actually knew about. You also, like I said, you get the train brake feature, which is this slider bar, which is acting like the parking brake for now. It also adjusts the labor, as I mentioned. If I do that, you'll see it moves up and down. And if I press these buttons, that's how you change it manually. You also get Rule 17 lighting, which is basically the headlight brightness. In other fancy words. Oops, that's the wrong button. Sorry about that. If I press the Rule 17 button once and twice, there you go. You see I can change it. And you can set it to manual mode as well, or automatic mode, which is what I like to use. So when the locomotive is in operation, it goes bright, and then it goes dim when it's realized it's stopped. One last thing is sequence control as well, which I'm sure a lot of people know. When you hold down aux 1, you get 2 dings and a whistle. I will demonstrate. And eventually the crew will say we want to get a move on. But basically when the locomotive goes around at certain speeds, it'll play like it's actually going on a big trip and play exclusive sounds now and then and blow the whistle and all sorts of stuff like that.
Dispatcher, we have the green. Cleared outbound. Over.
Copy that. Out.
So I guess with that, we'll just run the locomotive around for a few laps, and we'll recap what is pretty much done on every Legacy steamer.
Here we go. Over.
Affirmative. Keep it rolling. Out.
Okay, folks, that was our test run. I forgot to mention technically 2 things. On the Legacy remote and on the Legacy remote only, to my knowledge at this point, the whistle is 3-step quillable. So if I pull it this much, that's the first step. Here's the second, and here's the third. Another thing I forgot to mention was the bell. You can manually ring the bell if you don't like the automatic. If you press the bell button on your controller or hold the bell button up or bell slider up, this happens. Now on Legacy, you can do this if you don't like the automatic swinging or automatic ringing of the bell. Personally, I like to ring the bell manually myself, but that's just me. Anyway, I hope you've figured out a couple of the similarities between the two so far, if you already know Legacy, or if you have the new one and you're looking back. Those are pretty much the things that are exactly the same between these models. A couple things I've mentioned have been changed, however, but I wanted to point out how they work on the Legacy system. Let me go over some of the new differences on the new model, using the R1 saying how they're not on this, or how they've changed. Probably the most famous of all of them is you can change the whistle and the bell pitches on the newer locomotives. And how you do that is if you press the aux1 button before using the whistle or the bell respectively. So if I do this, you can hear the sound going on and these two lighting up, meaning aux1 has been pressed. So if I apply the whistle, it's the same sound. If I do it again and try the bell, nothing changes. That's because Lionel hasn't implemented the system on the older models yet. So you unfortunately are only stuck with the bass sounds and not interchangeable ones, which is fine depending on the model. I will admit that on the one that I have so far, you can change them. I like using one set in particular and don't really like to change it. But that's completely up to you, the user, if you want to change that. Another thing you might want to note is when I manually ring the bell, look at how one-to-one it is when I actually use the slider. Keep that in mind. Another thing is when I press the aux2 button, watch and listen what happens. All the lights go silent, including the trailing lights, or the marker lights on the tender. When I press it again, they all just come back on. Just keep that in mind. One other thing I forgot to mention is when the bell's ringing automatically, take a listen to this. Very rhythmic. You also want to keep that in mind. Using the aux2 button, or aux1 button, and then the 1 or 2 or 7 keys, basically the tower comm or crew talk, you will always be denied from the tower to move when stopped.
Dispatcher, I'm made up. Can I depart? Over.
I believe it ran out, so it might actually give us the...
Negative. Hold your position. Over.
There, we got the negative.
Yes, sir. Holding for a signal. Out.
Now, if I were to press the crew talk, we did not press aux1. Listen to this.
Dispatcher here. You're cleared outbound. Over.
We got the grant.
Understood. Out.
Another thing to note is if you listen carefully to the audio, it is very solid. You can make out what they're saying very well, and it's very audible in a good way. You can make out what they're saying, and it basically sounds like two people are having a conversation within about, a good 6 feet. Did you also notice that when I turned on and off the lights, how very quick it was? Keep that in mind as well. And if I were wanting to change the tender lights, I can turn the tender lights off by pressing this button here and turning them back on. Pressing it again does nothing. It keeps them on. It's the same with the marker or indication lamps up here. I hope you've started to put together what I'm doing here, because I'm going to shut down the R1, we're going to put the G4A on the track, and we're going to show you what's a little different with it compared to the R1.
Going to sign the register book. Thanks, dispatcher. Out.
Alright folks, we have the G4A on the track. I'm going to hold down the extended startup button, and I want you to figure out something that's a little different with it.
This is the Yardmaster. Get us set up running. Your train will be ready at 17:30. Over.
Copy that, dispatcher. Standing by. Out.
things to take in on that. First off, the startup sequence actually takes a couple seconds from when you hear the engineer saying we'll fire it up to it actually turning over, which isn't actually the worst. It's just a little different from the other locomotives. Another thing to note was, did you notice how the lights gradually come on instead of just being on full bright? I actually like that change a lot, and I'm going to turn down the volume a little bit so you can hear me better. Alright folks, so the first thing I want to go over is, most people know this, you can change the whistle on your new engines by pressing the aux 1 key. That's my personal favorite for this locomotive. You can also do the same for the bell. Now, like I said about the R1 and all previous Legacy locomotives, you can ring the bell manually, but as I said, it was almost 1-to-1 with the execution. Take a look at this and how this one's a little different. It's not delayed. If I do it right now, it'll do it 1-to-1. But the bell actually takes a little bit of time to trigger in the manual mode now. On the contrary, listen to the automatic mode. Not only is it a little not rhythmic anymore, but it changes up every now and then to make it sound a little bit more like it's actually a bell swinging and being, you know, the cord being pulled by the fireman, for example, than it just being an automatic ringer at the same rate every second. I want to also notice that when you do the aux 1 and tower comm, it has no effect.
The coal's full. Out.
Except what would happen when the locomotive is in operation. When you're moving, it would say your coal or water is this, and then what speed you're going at. If you do it when you're stopped, the engineer will just go,
Our water's full. Out.
like that. You actually have to press the button without aux 1 first.
Dispatcher, air is made. Brake test okay. Are we clear to pull? Over.
Sit tight for a minute. We've got some traffic to clear first. Out.
And I've noticed you always get denied first. If you press it again,
Dispatcher, I'm looking at that block signal. Can we move? Over.
You're clear to proceed east. Out.
and then you'll be granted. There's also no difference whatsoever with pressing aux 1 and the tower comm, or the crew talk. Or yes, tower comm, but it's now the crew talk. So if I do it without aux 1, take a listen.
Better tend that fire while we're waiting. Gonna be a hard pull ahead. Better tend that fire while we're waiting. Gonna be a hard pull ahead.
We got literally the same sound effect twice. A little bit of something to think about. As well, if you've also noticed, the vocals, first off, there's an actual engineer and fireman that talk to each other now. I'm assuming the person you hear on the crew talk is actually the conductor, who would be riding in the caboose instead of the engine. Which would kind of make sense. He'd be the one to call the dispatch, but the engineer also would have to keep in contact with the dispatch as well. So it's a little confusing to try to figure out, who the voices are coming from. But if you listen to the voices, they're a little different.
Dispatcher, air is made. Brake test okay. Are we clear to pull? Over.
Sit tight for a minute. We've got some traffic to clear first. Out.
I swear I want to put them through like filters or something to make them sound a little more distorted and actually through a radio. Which I like. I will admit, I like that. The actual radio sounds, I'm sure you've heard as well, are a little more different. They're a little more snappy, and the crew doesn't wait a couple seconds once they press the button to actually say anything. it's very responsive. Now, unfortunately, this engine doesn't have tender lights, but something else that's also known is you can change the color of the indication and marker lights by pressing the on button on the remote. Take a look. They're green, now they're white. Now they're green again. If I press off, they're off completely until I press on again, which they come onto white first and then green. Pretty cool feature, I will admit. That was something I was not expecting on this engine. I thought it was going to be a Vision Line exclusive thing to the GS series of locomotives when it was released. But I forgot the whole point of the Vision Line series. It was to bring in new features and adapt them on the future locomotives. I guess it was such an easy idea to put multicolor LEDs and have it so you can set them to different colors on the remote that it made sense to put them in almost everything else coming out. It also gives you a little more variety in your fleet, which is what Lionel's trying to do now, is give you variety of the same models. So it makes them a little more different. But as you know, like I've said, this is a Lionel Legacy locomotive. It'll have the same features as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, like the 32 steps of the chuffing. It'll have 200 speed steps. It's Bluetooth control. It has the 3 steps of the whistle. It'll do the water tower and coal sounds. It'll do the restricted, slow, medium, limited, normal, and high ball scenes. You have the train brake with the labor and the EFX buttons as well. It has the Roll 17 lighting, and it also has sequence control. I will not enable sequence control here, folks, and that was a lot of information to take in. But I will demonstrate the whistle just a little more. Because something I want to point out is whistle steam on these engines. I don't know when it started or if it was on the first one, but if you've ever noticed on the whistle steam, the more intensive you put on the whistle, the more steam actually comes out. I'm not sure how many people have ever noticed that, but I sure have. Take a look. You can see the trail kind of warping back and forth. Anyway, we'll get this locomotive running for a few laps. You'll get to listen to a few things. And one thing I want to point out when it's in operation, I'm sure it's just this locomotive, and this one in particular, maybe a few more in the future if Lionel doesn't rectify this. But I have noticed that the chuffing seems to be offbeat on this engine. On the R1, it was very, very melodic, and how it does the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This one, take a good listen and tell me if you can hear the same execution of it going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I personally hear a 1, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It throws the same sound in a couple times, and that hurts me just a little bit. Because that was one of the things I praised Lionel for, was the melodic Dyna-chuff that they would put in these things. It was very soothing to listen to, and at certain speeds of this thing, it just sounds like it almost has like a choke in the smoke box or something. It just, someone into steam locomotives, it's not a bad thing by any means, but I want to point out that the more and more you hear it, the more of, oh goodness, why is it like hiccuping on me? Anyway, let's put some throttle on this thing and get it on the layout a few times. You can take a listen to the sounds. I am not going to press aux 1 this time. I've pressed aux 2, I've pressed the tower com button once already, so here it goes again. And take a listen. I'm going to be denied, and I'm pulling in.
Dispatcher, train inbound. Am I clear? Over.
Everything is live. Keep them coming. Out.
So you only really get one check with the tower per run, I've noticed. And then you're inbound. Now it is very quiet, and I mentioned that you can do it on the previous models, but here is the injector steam sound effect, which is holding down the 3 key or the water tower button on your Legacy remote. Also noticing that the brake sounds are a little more different. Let me apply my parking brake real quick. And this is something that I didn't actually notice until screwing around with the Locomotive one day. As I mentioned how you can press aux 2 to turn off the lights, listen very closely to what the soundboard does when I press the button. I'm going to press aux 2 again, and listen closely, folks. You actually get the dynamo reeling in and cooling down. Unfortunately, the dynamo squeal is constantly in the Locomotive idle sound file, so you don't really get to phase that out. But if you listen to that. I can't actually think of a previous model besides the 2020 Volume 1. I'm saying before Lionel introduced this revision to the Legacy rail sounds. I can't think of any that actually do that. I could be completely wrong here, but this is the first time seeing it on this new engine. Which, honestly, I do have to say, it's a plus in my book. And I want to point out that if I haven't already, this video is not in any way me complaining at the Lionel company for changing the sounds. This is me saying, look at what has been changed on this new system. It might come off a little bit negative from me saying a few things, but it's just my critique. And to be perfectly fair, I'm actually very, very happy that Lionel changed some of these sounds. There was nothing wrong with them in the first place. Nothing wrong at all. But a revision now and then from 2007 and 2008 sound files is a warm welcome about, all these years later. And to be fair, it would actually make your customers want to buy your products more for you to update your systems now and then. So this is actually a kudos to Lionel saying, hey, I've noticed a couple things different. And I just wanted to point them out. Let's do my final wrap up. We'll bring it back over to the station and we'll wrap up the video. Now, I'm sure this is just this engine in particular. I know there was a run of mobiles from 2016, I believe, that had the same kind of issue where the actual engine is a little choppy when in a very slow motion, and particularly in reverse, as you probably have noticed. It's not a deal breaker or anything, and honestly, getting these flywheel motors to work so effortlessly or flawlessly is no easy thing to overcome. So it's just a little bit of a bummer that you can't run it at the known really slow crawls that these things are known for. But at the same time, it's not the worst in the world. And this thing definitely runs really good and fast, I've noticed as well. But yeah, just wanted to go over this. I want to know what you guys think in the comments below. What do you guys think? Did I miss anything? Did I capture a couple things? Did you actually not notice some of the things? Or did you notice some of these yourself if you have one of these 10-wheelers or the other engines that have come out in the last few months? Do you like any of these changes yourself? Would you want to have a couple things done better maybe? There's not too many things I could think to do better. It might just be like, again, this locomotive in particular with the sound card like overlaying itself after it goes at a certain speed. That's probably this locomotive and this locomotive alone. But the things about like the marker lights and the indication lights, you can change the colors of them, and the actual dynamo and how it sings and all that, and when you turn it off. I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, by the way. I've gone on long enough. I gotta upload this in time for National Train Day, or the Transcontinental 152nd anniversary, so I gotta get this thing uploaded tonight. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please give it a like if you did. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. That'll help out a lot. Like I said in the comments, if you want to say, hey, if you noticed anything, or I have this engine, it does this. If you want to just talk for a bit, then be my guest. I respond to almost all the comments that are like questions and whatnot. I promise on that. I'll get back to you as soon as possible if you don't see a response immediately. And if you want to continue the conversation or basically talk about other stuff, I also have a public Discord if anyone's interested. The information is in the description below. It will send you to my manager friend's account. She'll send you the information from there if you're interested. But pretty much until next time, guys, this was it. So until the next time, take care and stay safe.